It's interesting because when you talk to like the inner chamber of the hippest of the hip of roots music, you don't really come across Glenn Campbell too much. On the surface, he's thought of as this kind of crossover country pop guy who had a TV show and acted in movies and played Vegas a lot. But he's much, much, much more. You literally cannot listen to music from about 1960 to 1965. Rock music, the songs you're most familiar with, that you heard, that you grew up with on the radio, without hearing Glenn Campbell. And the thing is, you don't know it, because he was part of what was known as the Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew were, in music, the New York music scene and how that was going was very conservative. It was very controlled, and the guys were workmanlike, and they were very, very businesslike, you know. And they had everything written out for them and all of that. Music, because thanks to Frank Sinatra, popular music migrated from New York and expanded out to Los Angeles, because Frank Sinatra wanted to move out here, move to Palm Springs, and record in LA. So Capitol Records came up. A lot of different labels started coming in, and studios started springing up as of the late 40s, early 50s, up into the 60s. Well, what developed from that was the newer generation came up, and you got young guys like Phil Spector, before he was crazy. He was a musical genius, you know, and he hired and helped, along with others, helped to gather together these series of musicians who just all came together, and they knew how to make the sound great. You know, they could take a regular old song and make it turn into something magic. And people like Phil, like Brian Wilson, they began to see, well, these guys we can really use for something special, and that's what they did. Glenn Campbell was one of them. He came from Arkansas. He went out to Arizona for a while, and then he arrived in Los Angeles in 1960, where he became one of the most sought-out guitar session players that there was. And this guy wasn't just a guitar player. If anybody's seen him play, if you think of him as only as a hit maker, you're missing a whole big part of who Glenn Campbell actually was. The music just seemed to pour out of him, and it stayed with him. It was like in his bones, in his blood. When he played guitar, it was just like a part of his body, part of his soul. If anybody's ever seen him live, you know that. If you listen to familiar songs from the Beach Boys, you know that. One of his main accomplishments that people don't always know about was, for about 6 months in 1965, Glenn Campbell was a Beach Boy. He was hired to go on the road to replace Brian Wilson, who had a nervous breakdown and needed to stay home and wanted to stay home and record. So he went out on the road, and he became Brian's replacement for about 6 months. And somewhere during that time, after they replaced him, Glenn and the rest of the Wrecking Crew, including Hal Lane, Carol Kane, and others, Leon Russell was part of it. They stayed in the studio, and they worked very hard, and they created what today is really a pop masterpiece called Pet Sounds, which became a kind of an ode to adolescence. Glenn was a big part of those sessions. From that point on, after about 65, 66, he began as a solo artist. His first single, people largely don't know this, his first single that flopped was by Brian Wilson. And it sounded very, very Beach Boys-like. Later, he would develop his sounds from his Arkansas roots, and he would come out as a country singer, and his breakaway hit was John Hartford's "Jill on My Mind," and he didn't look back from there. From that point on, he worked his way into our hearts, into our neighborhood, into our televisions, into our radios. When I was 13, I remember hearing Galveston the first time on a transistor radio. He had a series of hits that just actually, it made him like a beloved, iconic pop country singer. And we had not had too many of those at that point. I think it was maybe him and Johnny Cash, a couple of others. But country music suddenly became part of everybody's lives all over America instead of just in the South. And that was thanks in large part to Glenn Campbell. Where did he get his songs? All of his extensive work in the LA studios hooked him up with people like Jimmy Webb. Then he was, is that what that is?
Yeah.